Hi guys, my name's Holly. Thank you so much for joining me. I'm going to get straight into this because today I wanted to talk to you guys about an important topic, and it has been coming up a lot lately in light of the upcoming holidays. Right now it is October, we're in the middle of Halloween month here in USA. Trick-or-treating is rampant, there is stuff going on everywhere, and we also have Thanksgiving coming up in just a few short weeks, and then we're going to roll on into Christmas. So a lot of people have been kind of sending inquiries about wanting to lose weight for the holiday season. And it got me thinking about dieting for specific events, birthdays, weddings, all these kind of things. And there tends to be a bit of a negative approach, or the wrong approach to this to these holidays and events, and it is causing us probably more damage than good if we're thinking about long-term outcomes. So today let's take a look firstly at what the stereotype way of dieting typically tends to be for holidays and events. What we usually see is people leaving it to the very last minute. So let's say you've got a birthday coming up, you've known about it for a little while perhaps, but you haven't really given it a lot of thought. So you're 3 weeks away from this big event, and all of a sudden it's like, okay, now I really want to start working out a little bit more. I maybe want to diet a little bit and try and lose these 5 pounds or a couple of kilos to look good for a specific event. That is all well and good if we are thinking about the now, what you're wanting right now, which is to lose a little bit of body weight. But is that actually detrimental to your longer term goals, which might be to get to, say, 10 pounds of weight loss or 5 kilos of weight loss, but be able to sustain it for long term or forever? Obviously, we're all very young, we have plenty of years ahead of us where we could potentially be eating a lot more and living the body weight that we want. So when you're starting to do these aggressive kind of crash diets, it may achieve the outcome that you're looking for. If it is only a few pounds, you might be able to do that. In fact, the research actually shows that we do not have a diet problem. For most of us, we can actually lose a little bit of weight in a certain amount of time. But the problem becomes the sustainability of that particular diet strategy. So we look at some of the research in longitudinal studies. Diets actually have about a 95% failure rate. So only 5% of people who undertake a diet are actually successful at maintaining it long term. So what's really scary is that after about a year of dieting, completing the diet, so we're thinking post-diet, almost a third of those people actually will regain that weight that they actually lost during that diet cycle. And then another third within 2 years will actually exceed the weight that they started that original diet, which is really scary. So what are we doing wrong? It is the crash dieting approach that is actually causing this phenomenon. So that brings me to my first strategy, or my first recommendation about setting up for a holiday or a specific event that you're going to. Plan ahead. Give yourself plenty of time as far as a weight loss approach that you're going for. So rate of loss. You've probably seen us talk about this in our other videos, in our reverse dieting videos, in our fat loss series. So if you haven't seen those, you can definitely go and check that out. But just briefly to touch on rate of loss, give yourself enough time so that you're not going in with a really aggressive approach. And what I mean by that is, if you are trying to lose greater than 1% of your body weight each week during a diet. So for me right now, I am, just to give you an example, I'm 62.5 kilos. So we're not wanting to go more than 1%. So 0.62 kilograms would be the absolute maximum that I would want to be losing each week before I start to risk my health in some way, shape or form. So the things that we're actually risking are a reduction in our resting metabolic rate, and we're also risking loss of lean body mass, which we do not want. We want to retain the muscle that we're working hard in the gym for. So we're trying to encourage fat loss, and to do that, it's much better if we take a slower, more conservative approach. Thinking about that, what is your current weight? What do you want to get to? And work out what kind of time frame you actually need to ensure that when you're dieting, you're actually under that 1% rate of loss per week, okay? Because that's going to be different to everybody depending on what your starting body weight is and what your goal weight is. The second thing that we also need to consider, and I mentioned this just before, is your reduction in your metabolic or resting metabolic rate. And this has various other terms that get thrown around within the industry. But what happens is if you crash diet and you do it really quickly, so let's say you're 62.5 kilos, that's my weight, and you want to lose, say, 2% of your body weight, which is a very aggressive amount. What happens is we tend to see a reduction in our metabolic rate, or our metabolism starts to slow down because we're basically sending out a warning signal to our body that we're going into starvation mode. Now, if we look at this from a primitive point of view, going back thousands of years before, dieting was something that we needed to do when food wasn't available, we needed to develop mechanisms that actually help prevent us from dying. I mean, from a revolutionary perspective, it's wonderful. We're trying to prevent us from starving. So when you initiate a diet and you put yourself in a calorie deficit, and particularly these more significant calorie deficits, what we start to see is a rapid reduction or slowing of our metabolism. And our body goes through a various physiological changes to kind of accommodate for that. So when you get to the end of your diet, okay, and you're just about to head off for your holiday, okay, you're looking good, you might have lost a few kilos for your trip or the event that you're planning, what happens is when you go away, now you're faced with all the temptations, you want to relax, you want to be able to have food and drink and enjoy yourself. Well, then you've just taken your metabolism to its all-time low. It is operating very, very slowly. Then when you try and return to your normal calories, okay, just say let me throw some numbers at you. Let's say before you left or before you started your diet, you were sitting at maybe 1,800 calories per day. And then for you to lose the 5 pounds or 2.5 kilos or whatever it is, you had to drop right down to, say, 1,100 calories to achieve that in a very short period of time. So you've dropped all these calories, but now when you go away, I'm pretty confident most of you are going to be wanting to eat these higher intakes, right? Because you're on holiday, you want to have your drinks. But your metabolism is still down here. It is very low. It is super slow, and it's not going to have time to catch up when you start eating those calories again, okay? So what happens? We end up gaining weight rapidly. During those adaptive processes that are taking place, there are plenty of other things that are happening and that are slowing down. So the way that we metabolize fat also slows and becomes impaired. One of the negatives that can happen is that when you do start to overfeed again, so you're on your holiday or you're at this big event and you're wanting to eat and drink whatever you like, that rapid intake of calories actually puts a stress on our adipocytes, or our fat cells. So we all have a set number of fat cells that we kind of hold steady at, okay? It's kind of like our body fat set point. And when you stress that cell and there's a huge rapid flux of calories coming in from food and drink, what we start to see is these adipocytes differentiating, or it's called cell differentiation. So we start to see division or dividing of those cells. So now we have even more fat cells. And so far, it seems to be that the number of cells that we then have cannot be reduced. They are there for good. Why is that even a problem? Well, what happens is that next time you put yourself through a diet, now your body is ramping up all of these systems and these processes to be able to capture all of that energy, okay? Because it doesn't want you to die. It doesn't want you to lose weight, because this is a protective mechanism. Now there is even greater potential for you to store more body fat. So as calories and food become available, you can store more. So that is a problem, and that is why we tend to see body fat overshooting. And I mentioned to you the statistics before about post-diet relapse. There's 2/3 of people after 2 years will end up regaining more body weight than they started. And part of the problem is probably due to the fact that they have rapidly increased their intakes. They've been so restrictive with their diets. They've gone, stuff it, I'm going to fast for 2 weeks until I get into shape for my holiday. And then they eat a lot really quickly, and they end up binge eating because they're so ravenous from starving that they end up overshooting their starting weight. Okay, and this cycle repeats and repeats. Just thinking about some of the statistics, we know that during the holiday season, Americans tend to gain, on average, 1 to 2 pounds every year. So between October and December. It doesn't sound like much just in 1 year, but if we look at a 10-year period, you're looking at potentially 20 pounds of weight gain. You know, this is why we're having this obesity epidemic. You know, people are doing things impatiently, in my opinion. They want everything right now, and they can't see past, you know, what the potential benefits are of doing things slowly. How can we diet better for a holiday is my next point. Reverse diet into your holiday. Now, if you guys aren't familiar with a reverse diet, I definitely recommend going and checking out our video series on reverse dieting on my YouTube channel, which explains it in a little bit more detail. But the best approach, in my opinion, is to prepare in advance for your holiday. So what I would say is about 12 weeks out, or work out what your rate of loss is, what weight you'd like to get to, okay, to be really comfortable and really happy, and then reverse into this holiday. So I would give yourself at least, at the very minimum, 4 or 5 weeks of reverse dieting before your event or before the holiday that you're going to, okay? Why? Because we can actually maintain that new physique with a conservative reverse diet. So let's say I get down to, say, 62 kilos, might be my ideal weight. And then in 5 weeks' time at Thanksgiving, if I started reverse dieting right now, I could slowly get my calories up, maybe by 300 or 400 by Thanksgiving. And now I have not 1,400 calories to play with. I can have 1,800 or 1,900 calories and potentially have maintained the better part of my physique that I have worked very hard to achieve. Does that make sense? So I did a similar thing when I went away to Thailand earlier in the year. So I got my weight down to something that I was quite comfortable with, which was 65 kilos for me. And then I did 8 weeks of reverse dieting, and I only gained 1 kilo during that time, but I got my calories up to 2,200. So you can bet your bottom dollar by the time I got to Thailand, I've got 2,200 calories to play with. I can eat and drink whatever, or for the most part, whatever I would like. Okay, I'm a flexible dieter. You guys probably know this by now, but that is a lot of flexibility and a lot of option, and it helps you take that focus away from feeling like you need to be watching what you're eating all the time. To summarize, think about your rate of loss before you're going to actually embark in this diet. Give yourself plenty of time before your holiday or before the event that you've got coming up to get to a weight that you're comfortable with. Once you're there, conservative reverse diet into the holiday period so that you don't have to be restrictive and be careful with what you're eating. I hope that really helps you guys. It's definitely the approach that I use to any big events that I have coming up. If you have any specific questions, you're welcome to put them in the comments below. Subscribe to my YouTube channel if you're not already subscribed, and thank you so much. Have an awesome day.